Welcome to Reframed. I'm your host, Brooklyn Grady. Let's reframe your approach to business and life together. Let's dive in. All right. Welcome to Reframed. I am so excited for you guys to hear today's guest. I know and love her. She is she's introduced herself like this before, I guess. So I think I can, but she is like a warm hug.
Oh,
So please welcome Stacy. Stacy, tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, thank
you. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited. And as a mindset coach, I will tell you, I love the title or the what word am I blanking on?
Like a tagline or a...
Reframed. That's your title.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love a good reframe mentally. And I think it's so cool. Yes. Okay. So I am Stacy Musgraves. I kind of refer to myself as a mindset and life coach. And I use those two terms specifically because I really take a holistic approach. And I know that everything in your life, in your business, any growth that you have, anywhere you're holding back, it all comes back to your mindset.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I'm doing right now. It's not what I've always done, but I'm truly now living like fully in my purpose. And it just feels so good. So I'm so excited to be here. And it looks so good on you.
You seem so happy whenever I see you on Instagram or when we have conversations. Yeah. And for those listening, I currently work with Stacy. She's amazing.
Thank you.
I can just see it just like... Someone used the term for me the other day. They said, like, you look like you're blossoming. And I love that. And I want to use that for you today because watching you this past year even just really step into who you are, it seems like you're blossoming.
Well, thank you. So I received that as like such a beautiful gift.
Okay.
Really, I do because I'm definitely feeling it. And
amazing.
I know that we all hold ourselves back in different places, some people more than others. And I really held myself back for so long. So it is truly, about never giving up, always kind of holding this vision of like, if this isn't feeling good and it's not feeling like me, I need to pay attention to that. I need to listen to that and take steps in the direction where I want to go.
Yeah, you're truly walking the walk and talking the talk, like what you're telling people to do. Yeah. You mentioned coming from, this wasn't what you always did. Can you share a little bit of your background of where you were originally? I know you were a photographer.
I won't go too far back because I used to be, oh my gosh, like I used to be a teacher, elementary school teacher. And I started, I started when I didn't get a full-time job doing photography. And so that kind of started like that career. It was like, my husband was an entrepreneur. I never thought that I would have been. Never in my life did I identify as an entrepreneur. No. I was like, I'm a teacher and I went to school for this. And then this is the rest of my life. And so I started doing photography like as I started to have kids and then, took the normal path I feel that a lot of us do as photographers. It was like, I'll kind of shoot anything, see what I really like. One year I was like, I am so committed to weddings. I am all in on these, did a whole rebrand. The very next year, I found boudoir photography. And I was like, okay, wait a second. Weddings are not for me. Boudoir photography is for me. And if you go back that far in my mindset journey, I also had thoughts of like, Stacy, stop it. You just did a rebrand last year. Why would you do this again? Pick something, stay in a lane. My gosh. Like, you know what I mean? That's how I talk to myself.
Yeah.
And I was like, nope, I refuse to listen to that because I can't discount the feeling I feel when I'm shooting boudoir photography. And so I did that for probably 3 or 4 years full time. I lived in a very like small town, rural area, and positioned myself as a luxury boudoir photographer when I started thinking like, nobody's going to want this. Nobody's going to let me share their photos. Erie is so small. I can't possibly find enough people. And then again, I was like, wait a second. Do you want that to be the truth? If so, you'll find it and never do it. And it wasn't. I found a different truth. It was really like, okay, I love doing this. And so even from there, though, then I started coaching and I was like coaching boudoir photographers. And the moment for me that really kind of clicked was I had a photography program and the women in it at the time, one of them said to me, Stacy, I love your course. Like, I think that the pricing sheet is great. I think that, your prompts that you put in there are awesome, but I'm here for the mindset calls. And I was like,
really?
What? wait a second. And it was that moment of
Time
like,
out.
I feel like when you're in a relationship and you're like, wait, that's what you wanted? That's what I wanted too.
No way.
Yes. And then
Yeah.
now I had this nagging feeling again that I was like, oh no, I'm doing it again. I'm pivoting again.
Oh, no,
and I could
here it
feel
comes.
it. But
Yeah.
I am so intuitive and I pay attention to that. And I'm like, I listened to it last time and it served me very well.
Mhm.
So I'm going to listen to this here and I'm going to pay attention to opportunities and see like what kind of comes up from it.
I love that. And that, would you say that was kind of your pivotal moment then, even getting into mindset coaching specifically?
Oh, for
was
sure.
just feeling that nudge and listening to it?
The nudge. And then actually, as you say that, I can kind of think of another thing that, well, two things actually. One, I was on
Let's
a
hear it.
retreat. And while I was there, I remember a few of the women at the retreat. Like I can vividly put myself there. I was sitting on the floor. We were having this like round table conversation. And these women, I can feel them like in my head. They were like lurching at me. Like, Stacy, if you don't become a life coach or something, like, what are you doing? You are so good at this. And you're always seeing a different perspective. And I was like, okay, like I'm listening.
Okay.
And then another really big moment was, so my husband and I moved from Pennsylvania to Colorado, packed up our 3 kids, sold our businesses. And while we were renovating our house, because we thought we were renovating to stay there, but then it turned into, wait, we need to renovate to sell. So I was listening to like an audiobook. So I was always consuming just everything mindset work. And I stopped and said to him, I'm like, you know what it is for me? If I can picture myself on a stage, and I was like, and the fact that I'm even putting myself on a stage is not lost on me because I always said I'm so shy and, I don't really know who I am and what I'm about and how could I motivate people? I'm like, if I put myself on a stage, I'm not talking about boudoir photography.
No.
I love it. I love what I do. I love the confidence that it's brought to my clients and to myself. But I feel like it healed so much in me and my body image issues. And it's like now that chapter was closed. And I said, what I'm speaking about on that stage is how we all have one life. And I feel like we are wasting it by holding ourselves back and being in situations that we don't want to be and in relationships with people that we don't want to be with and spending time and like not protecting our energy in the right ways to truly live as we were meant to be and as like a way that really, really fulfills us. And that I'm like, okay, that's it. Like I have chills throughout my whole body, even now saying it. I'm like, that is my purpose. And I can't ignore that.
You just knew like you needed to follow it.
Yeah.
And when it's that strong too, if you can articulate that to your husband, think of how more powerful it is too, like after you sit with it for a while and you start, like the wheels start spinning of how you could do it and it really becomes reality. And you've made it reality.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's wild.
It is so wild. That's awesome. I was thinking when you were saying that of our call this past week too, of like the energy of what you actually want to be doing. Because you questioned me. We were talking about mini sessions. And for those listening, I was like kind of working through some stuff of like how I was doing it. And it kind of just came off, I'm just doing this because I feel like I kind of need to. It's what I do, to offer a lower ticket item. And you really challenged me with that. And Stacy, she just kind of came at me with like, but is that like really what you want to be doing?
Yeah.
Like, is that actually how you want to be spending your time? Like, how do you protect your energy? And like, even in that little like coaching moment now, hearing you say like, you have to follow, like you only have one life. Do what you feel like you want to be doing. Use your energy wisely. Don't spread yourself thin. And even what you mentioned about like having a teaching job to start and then transitioning from that. I feel like so many people can relate to that, especially photographers. Like you have like the job that brings you money and then you have photography. And so it's like the side thing and you feel so much guilt around what you should be doing. Can you share more on that train of thought? Like people that are struggling with the shoulds that they should be doing or the pressure from other people. How do you move away from that? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. What's interesting is if I look back, I've always been someone who, it's funny because I would probably have said that I was not confident growing up, middle school, high school. However, I think it was actually completely the opposite. I think that now I look back and see myself as like a very quietly confident person.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just always someone who, if I liked something, you could try to convince me that it wasn't the right way to go, but I just had something innately that was like, nope, this is important to me and this is how I'm going to move forward. And your opinion of me truly does not matter.
Yeah.
And I've done it with like very close relationships too. And so that doesn't really offer anyone advice because it's kind of like, okay, so you're saying like, just do it, but tune
just don't
in
care what they
if you're
think.
not, but like really think about that. With every single decision we make, every thought we have a choice every single time. And you can choose to let that, if you have this idea, you can choose to let someone else's opinion shut it down because you feel like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I would challenge that it's probably because you're a little bit afraid.
Yeah.
And them challenging you allows you to say, yeah, you know what? You're right. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm going to listen to them. And then you're off the hook.
Right.
And that's the part that people kind of don't always like. And so it's like, sit with that for a minute. You know, if you kind of think like, okay, this is what I want to do, but I'm not because I'm worried about what I can't even think of anyone that I would worry about their opinion. You know, the quote, like, okay, don't worry about people's opinions. They're not paying your bills. That sort of thing.
Yep.
That's like easy to go with. Yeah. Like you're not living my life, but it's really like you get to choose every single time who you want to be and how you want to show up.
Yeah. I love that. I think that mind blocks in general, they creep up on you and they're almost camouflage. Like it's easy to put it off on someone else as if they're the reason you're not doing it.
Yeah.
But like you said, when you get under the surface, what's there? Like, is it actually you? Is it a fear you have? Is that common for you to see in the work you do? Is that like, it's a surface level fear, but then there's something much deeper?
For sure. I feel like there's always something deeper. And, you know, it's funny because as I was doing more mindset work, people would always say to me, and now if I look back on just my life in general, I've always been the person that like, people would be always saying to me, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. Like, I feel like I just open up to you so easily. And I'm like, I get that all the time, you know? And I
can
think
totally
it's because,
see that.
Yeah, I know about myself. I am very warm and I am comforting and I am non-judgmental and I'm willing to be vulnerable first. And I think that's the really big thing. So yeah, I just kind of see, it's like I almost see the layer underneath. And I've always had a skill of presenting something very tactfully. And so I am never the type of person to push my opinion because you need to create the opinion for yourself and let that become your opinion so that you can move forward.
Yeah.
And so that's really what that's really what I'm able to do is just like challenging a thought, but it's never aggressively. It's truly like, okay, tell me more. Or what do you think about that? Or what's under that? And then what I have found is that we all live in our heads so much that so many people just want a space to talk things out. And I can't tell you the amount of times that my clients are like, oh, well, now that I say it, actually, I've already kind of answered it for myself. I'm like, yeah, I'm the space holder. So,
like, we'll get to the answer. You'll probably answer it for yourself.
Yeah.
But it's like you put a question mark where a period is for people.
Oh, for
like,
sure.
You think it's done, like you think it's settled, but then really, is it?
And it's not also, I'm sorry, but I was going to say, it's not that like we hold on to these excuses knowing that we do. Like you said, they're kind of camouflaged. If you think about your life, I heard this quote the other day and I've heard it multiple times, but it's like, you don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. Because if you think about it, you are going through, you only have your one perspective. Nobody can be you, obviously. Right. And so there are absolutely going to be things that you just can't see. And in coaching, it's, you know, the term is said that we like see your blind spots. And I love thinking about that because if you think about even driving in a car, you can only see so much. And there are little areas that you cannot see. And if someone like a coach is there to say, well, hey, what about this little part right here? And you're like, gosh, I didn't even like notice that. And those are the things that are like the underlying things that get to come out if you, I say, if you're willing to honestly be brave enough to do coaching.
to dig into it.
Yeah.
Because when you sign up for coaching, you're also, I look at it I look at you as like business therapy. I don't know if that's the right term for it or not. But
I have had a client who said, I just call you my business therapist. And I'm like,
perfect.
I'm into it. I like it.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah, no.
Because it's healing. But my point with this is like when you sign up for it or when you commit to any coaching, like you're also acknowledging to yourself that like to get the results, you have to get in the weeds because you're not going to get the results without being willing to put yourself out there to do the work.
Yeah.
What kind of results have you seen? I know we're kind of jumping around here, but like people that are willing to get in the weeds and do the work, do you see better results or progress for them versus the ones that are maybe hesitant?
Okay, so I want to go back for a second though before I answer that to the business therapist comment, because it is like a form of therapy if you think about it. You know, you're just like really sharing. Business is so hard. It can be so hard and so lonely. And so there's that part of it that does truly feel comforting. But at the same time, how I always differentiate with therapy is because I've had a client who went to a lot of therapy and I would almost help prep her for her therapy appointments. Yeah. Because if you think about therapy, I think about it, it's very like focused in the past, you know?
True.
Where have you had something happen in your life that you are now carrying with you? And I love the switch to coaching because it's very forward thinking.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not going to go into like people's past and trauma because I know there's so much that people are still holding on to. But it's like therapy allows you to kind of dig that up. And then you get to decide every day moving forward, how do I show up moving forward?
Yeah.
And that's where I love to kind of bridge that gap between it. So even if some of my, I won't want to say favorite clients or best clients, or the ones with like the biggest progress have been the ones who are also going to therapy because they're so self-aware. And that's a part that you really need.
Yeah.
And so as far as like answering the question about like getting in the weeds with it, I also don't ever want anyone to think that it's like a hard thing that you have to do. Because if you really think about it, okay, so you're telling me that I'm going to have to show up and be vulnerable and like dig in and get in the weeds and like train my brain. Like that feels like work.
It sounds
feels like a lot of work.
Like, and I don't want to sign up for that.
Yeah. And I will say there is a part of it where like, yeah, I don't want to take on any clients who are not willing to do the work. But I'm not there to put anything on your plate. I'm there actually to take things off of your plate. And so it's just about like slowing down everything because you are a business owner and you do have a lot going on and you are living life from that one perspective. So then I come in and it's kind of like, okay, what do you have going on? How can I help? What can I see that's like the underlying thing? And then, yes, if you are willing to do the very simple foundational work of retraining your brain, you get to make that choice. Yeah. And it like does get to be so simple.
And you have those results. I know when I signed on with you, like it was not a drudgery thing. Like I should clarify with that because it really wasn't like, I have to sign. No, it wasn't at all. I looked forward to it. And honestly, I look forward to our calls because it gives me the space on my calendar and I know you're going to be there for support in whatever it is. And you're not just like, yes, you are a cheerleader for sure, but you also help me walk through things that to be honest, if I was just trying to sit down and quick do my to-do list, I'm not going to sit and think through and even have the perspective you do. Like we hear commonly, like if you're too close to your own genius.
Yeah.
And do you see that often with clients too? Like you were mentioning the blind spots that like the things you see is things that they miss.
Yeah. Oh gosh, totally. And I'm glad that you brought this up too, because it's like, I also don't want there to be this misconception that mindset coaching is only for like the people who are broken or the people who aren't succeeding. Like, no, actually, like quite the opposite. Right. It's for like the really high achieving people who just don't see this like unique gift in themselves. And so what I am really able to do is, let's say you have an offer that you want to sell. And you're like, I'm just getting stuck. And now it's feeling like, I don't know if anybody's going to want to buy this. I don't know if anybody's going to want to hire me. Why would they? What can I offer? And I can actually be in that space to slow you down and say, okay, well, tell me Tell me what you do offer. Why would your client need this? What are you providing? And then at the end of that, I'm able to say, you just sold it. You just did it. And it was your authentic words. Yeah. And sometimes we do just need like the space to talk it out, whether we need like practice getting comfortable with it, or I always use the term like, try it on. Try it on and see. And if you don't like the way you felt and you don't like the way you sounded, your clients aren't going to like it either. Right. And so then you get to rework it. And I hold that space for you to do that and like ask the right questions to prompt you to get there.
Yeah. And it comes so easily to you, at least from my perspective, I can see that it does.
Thank you. Yeah.
Versus, yes, of course. If I were to step into those shoes, I know it's not a gift of mine. And I've had you come into
my last coaching round.
Oh, sure. Say, wait a minute.
I don't know.
Let's pick up that period. Put a question mark. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's
but it's
true.
You know what I mean, though? It is different because I was actually talking to someone and they were like, well, they were like really into strategy. And they're like, well, maybe I should become a mindset coach. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. There are things that you definitely should be doing. Yes, because they're going to serve you well. But I'm also such a believer in, no, stick to your own genius. Yeah. And if your genius is able to like tell people, these are the steps you need to take. Right. And once you find a way to do it that feels really good to you, you're gonna fly.
Yeah.
And that's the part for me. It's like, no, don't veer from what you're doing. Really stay in that. And yeah, if you're noticing that like your audience would benefit from someone like me, then I can step in. Like, I think it's such a partnership between strategy and the mindset work.
100%. And like for people listening, that's how I met you. I came to a retreat in Denver and you were partnered with Jenny. Jenny Maroney was the host of the retreat and she's very much strategy driven for those listening. She's incredible. And Stacy was mindset coach and you were there in tandem and Dustin was there too.
Yeah.
And it was like all these pieces together, the strategy with the mindset, it was so magical. I remember like one of our first roundtables when we broke up and we were sitting on little couches over in Denver and you were just so approachable. And for me, coming in as an attendee, seeing you there, you know, kind of in the position of a coach or as a mentor.
Yeah.
And it's new, it's intimidating. And you were just so open. And you're like, what can I help you with? Show me what you're working on. Like it was so easy to approach you. And I think as a coach, that is a really valuable asset to have and very attractive for anybody, but especially when you're an attendee or the ones trying to learn from somebody.
Yeah. Well,
that's definitely a strength.
Thank you very much. I've always tried to be that. And especially probably a lot of that comes from being in circles where I didn't receive that. You know, a lot of times it's like we kind of go back to our past selves and gosh, I wish I could have told myself all the things that I'm telling myself now and all the things that I get to like give to my clients.
Yeah.
It's really like, why are you doubting yourself? Why are you selling yourself short? Yeah. You have this unique gift and you have a voice. And if you are unwilling to share it because you're afraid, then you are providing a disservice.
Right.
And that kind of like takes all the emotion out of it too, you know? Because we're very emotional and we're energetic and we're like, oh man, but no, I'm so scared. And so I love that that's what you felt because I feel like a lot of people need that. And a lot of people need a real, authentic, like, just let me be myself kind of situation.
Yeah. People are valuing, I think you said it to me the other day, people are valuing connection, like above anything else.
Yeah.
They just want connection.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing that you provide, even just being there for someone to connect in the way that they need. Like, help me through this. Right. What do you see that I don't? And bring your strengths. That's really beautiful. What are some of the common mindset blocks that you see among your clients, specifically photographers?
Photographers. I feel like they're, as a photographer, and then when I was coaching photographers, there is such, and rightly so, but there's such a comparison. And I like, honestly, it's interesting because if you think about the common ones, I think of perfectionism. We can probably all relate to that. Self-doubt, absolutely. Comparison, sure. Fear of judgment. And I think that we all kind of feel those at different times and in different situations. And I always talk about mindset work as maintenance. It's something where, like, here's the thing, you can wait until you burn out completely, whether you're successful or not. Either way, you could burn out. And you could wait until that point to seek out help. However, if you're also like trying to handle those things before, then it's just so much smarter. It's like your car. You take care of it so that it gets to show up properly.
Preventative care.
Yeah, for sure.
Do it before.
Yeah. So I think like a lot of comparison, I think just because it's such a wide market, photography. And, you know, we have this difference of like, there are hobby photographers and there are professional photographers, but even in that, because it's not regulated, it's all based on value. And so we put so much of our worth into that. And then we're comparing ourselves to others. And then we're not truly staying in our own lane and thinking like, okay, this is me. This is how I show up. This is what I give. This is what I'm able to provide to my clients. And it really doesn't matter what's outside of that. So I always tell business owners, like, put your blinders on, on, stay true to you, and you are going to feel the best.
Yeah.
But then there's perfectionism, because I feel like, oh, I'm going to focus on my gear and I always want to be better and I'm going to work on my craft. Yeah, absolutely. But you could be the best photographer in town. And if nobody knows about you, you don't have a business.
Right.
So I feel like that's another big one too. Comparison and perfectionism, I would say, are like jumping out at me for photographers.
Ones. And your experience too, like you've been in the shoes of a photographer too. So like you get firsthand what it's like to be building and comparing, and the barrier to entry is fairly low too. Right. And so wherever you're at in your photography journey, like there's always going to be somebody that's better than you and somebody that's worse than you. Yeah. And so it's like, put the blinders on, give yourself a little bit of space to focus on what you're doing.
And
that's
slow
really good
down
advice.
too. Like I know that we don't want to slow down, but if you can truly be at peace at all parts of the journey, you will attract more people to you. You will feel better. You will live your life in a more abundant place. You will not burn out mentally because you are truly at peace with who you are and where you are. And what I always thought about too, when I had this boudoir photographer that I like absolutely loved. I found her work and I was like, oh my gosh, like I could never do that. And then I was like, wait a second, maybe I could. Like, I'm going to start. And then that minute that I started to compare myself to her, I'm like, wait a second, that would totally discount all of her experience and all of her time that she put in.
Right.
If you think for a second that you can do this in a year, what she's done in 10 years,
right.
That's like a huge slap in the face to her.
True. Yeah.
So if you think about it from that perspective, it's like we all have to do the reps. We all have to put in our time. Right. We can't just become an overnight success.
Right.
And I think that's a big problem too with social media. We're all looking to be viral. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we are all focusing on the wrong things. And even as I say it, I say we, I'm like, no, it's actually not we. Because I feel like I am just not, I don't know whether it's I see through it. I just don't connect with it. But I'm like, that's not my purpose. I don't need to have millions of people following me. That's not even going to lead to business.
Right.
Like, we're chasing the wrong things.
My perspective on it is that you have so much clarity around your purpose. And just like you're saying, the peace around it. And so when you feel at peace with what you're doing, you don't feel the need to compete in the other rings of things that don't serve you.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm not going to be a part of that game. Like, why would you be? I think it's really wise, too, to be able to see that because most people can't. And even for me, like social media, you see the new hooks, you need to have 7-second reel and now it's got to be 5 seconds or now you got to use this audio or, always the next thing versus really staying in your own lane, putting the blinders on and just kind of trusting that what you're doing has a purpose.
Right. And also on the other side of that too, because I don't want to in any way think that I have a negative relationship with social media because I don't. But I know that so many of my clients have. And they use the term, I'm just like doom scrolling and that's how I spend my night. And I'm like, do you want to be doing that? You know, if not, let's find a way to stop it because your body is addicted to it. You are addicted to that feeling. If it is causing you stress, if it's causing you anxiety, even though it's not a pleasant feeling and you think like, well, why would my body be addicted to that? Because it's a feeling and your body tunes into that. And so when you, even if it does give you, it's like, when we talk about kids and, they just want attention, even if it's negative. That's the thing. Like your body wants a feeling, even if it's negative.
Check the Instagram, check the likes, quick hit.
Yep. And whether it's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing, then if it is a bad thing and it kind of becomes this stressful thing and, you're comparing yourself. Well, again, unfortunately, now you have another excuse. You're like, well, this is why it's not working because there are people like that. Of course, they're going to go to a different photographer. Why would they choose me? And then you get to kind of stay stuck in that.
And you kind of feed yourself that narrative. It kind of keeps you in that place. Do you have any tips off the top of your head for having a healthy relationship with social media? How do you manage those kind of feelings?
Yeah, I actually just had a girl ask me the other day, she's like, when did you really start getting consistent with bookings with boudoir photography? And I was like, well, here's an answer you probably won't like. What I found was it was totally dependent on my energy. Totally.
Really?
And so if I would, because I built my business, like, again, in a small town, 6-figure business. And my average sale was probably like $3,000. Never thought I would get to that point.
Right.
Because I held myself back for so long, Yeah. And because I was like focused solely on Instagram, my website didn't really convert. It was like my website was there kind of like sitting as a portfolio. And I know a lot of people can relate to that because a lot of people think social media is the only way. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not. But what I found was those moments where I'm like, I'm just really not getting any bookings and I'm not getting inquiries. And like, how can people not know how good this experience is? Yeah. And then I realized, right, you're not showing them.
Okay.
And it sounds so simple, but it's like, okay, well now when I have a shoot, I'm going to show you all the behind the scenes. I'm going to show you what the outfits are. I'm going to show you what the conversation was like, what the consultation was like, what this woman's biggest insecurities were, what her fears were, how she felt at her reveal, where she put her photos. Like, if you think about one client, there are like, I can at least think of 30 different pieces of content about one client.
Oh, for sure. Right.
And when I went to that mentality of like, oh, wait a second, I'm making this way too hard. Because really, if what I said was, I just want them to know how great this experience is, then if I just work, which I love, and then I just show the experience and talk about that, it gets to be so much easier than I ever made it.
Yeah.
And so when I did those things and I was like doing it more consistently, then people were attracted to what I was doing. And it became so simple that way. And then when I started to get in my head and I'm like, I haven't really had any bookings. Then I look back, if I went back to my stories archives, I wasn't showing up at all last week. I wasn't doing,
Yeah.
And so I would even then complain to my husband and I would be like, well, actually I posted something and then like I got 2 more inquiries. And he's like, funny how that works, And so it is just like we get so stuck and we let our emotions take over. And that would be the thing, like just letting it be easy and letting it be focused on connection.
Yeah.
And just showing what you do is
Don't
really
make it hard. Just
simple. Yes.
Show what you do.
Yeah.
I love that you're not having to focus on the new hooks or trending anything. Like just show up, show them what your business is like, of you working, what the experience will be like for them. Really, you just like relate to them.
I want to be really authentic too, because I have worked with mindset coaching. I've worked with a social media person. Yeah. And with that, I'm able to have the conversation with her. She can put my stuff into a framework. I didn't do this at the beginning though. But even still with her there, I still show up in my stories. And I find that when I just talk about what I have going on, like if I go to my stories and I share like, I had this great podcast episode and this is what we talked about. Yeah. It's just, I'm just being me. And it does truly get to be so easy. But I had to push myself because I was never confident showing up on camera. And I had to like sign up for a social media course. And I had to hold myself accountable and put myself in places that held me accountable.
Yeah.
because I let myself off the hook very easily. I'm like, no,
Ooh,
that's scary.
I can't do this. Your stories today were so great too of change. Like you got to be willing for change. And even seeing that you said like you used to be shy. I know you mentioned that earlier too, but now you're confident. And I never knew the shy girl because I met you in January. And so I've seen the confident woman. And I can also see it's like the quiet confidence. Like you're not ever overbearing or over the top, but it just like, it's cool to know that version of you, but also really insightful, maybe is the word. Maybe that's the wrong word, of like where you came from. Because I think so many people could relate to that person, the person before you became the one you are now, where it's confident. You're doing the thing. You're offering one-on-ones and you're doing groups and you're killing it. Like you just are blossoming.
Thank you. Let me tell you my first story when I was like, okay, I need to do this. And I was in a social media course. This was probably like 4 or 5 years ago now. And I had to totally use it as a scapegoat, like the course that I was in. And I always say with my clients, I'm like, you know what? You can say, my coach is having me do this. Like, that's totally fine because it doesn't matter how you get to the end result. It's just that you get there. And so I remember getting on my stories and I was like, okay, I'm really nervous to be doing this and I need you to know that, but I can't just pretend. Like, I can't fake it till I make it. I don't want to fake anything. And so I did that. And then I continued to show up. And people started saying things to me like, oh my gosh, I look forward to your stories every day. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? You know? And I really had to step into this like, okay, remove yourself from it. It's not about you. Nobody's there because they want to be around me. It's because I make them feel a certain way.
True. Yes.
And I think about that as business owners. Like that's what marketing is. It's how you make people feel. And I think we discount that so much. We take away the human aspect of it. And we think like we live our lives in squares on social media. And it's like, no, that's not really what people want. We want connection. And I would always say people buy from people, but like we remove the human element, which is so strange, but because we're afraid.
Even more so, I see that becoming prominent, maybe the last like 5 years of understanding a brand, understanding the connection, like the value behind the brand, even like when people make purchases and even myself, whenever I go to work with somebody, especially in a coaching container, I really pay attention to how they make me feel. And I definitely didn't notice that early on, like in my entrepreneurial journey, but that's, I think even like industry-wide, like, or outside of photography, I think people care a lot about what they're investing in and the connection they have with it. So that's a really interesting point. I like that. What are some of the common misconceptions that people have around mindset coaching?
I feel like I already talked about the biggest one. I think the biggest one for me was like, this is only for me if I'm struggling. I think that's one. I think there's another common one that it's, you just like are so woo-woo when you live in this delusional place, right? That's another one. And I take a really like hybrid approach to most things in my life. Honestly, I'm like, it's all about balance. I like things on this side and I like things on this side. And the woo-woo part is obviously we go to like the manifesting. And if you're going to, write down these things 10 times and then you're going to like write these affirmations and then you're going to visualize this. But that can't be all of it. And it's like, we know that we have to set ourselves up with that though as the foundation. So that's what I think about. Like you are here, all of us are here living this human experience. And if you look around today where you are right now in your life, and if you do not like where you are in any capacity, it's because you allowed yourself to get there. And if you think about it that way, it's like, okay, every choice that I made led me right to this point. And so if that discourages you, I don't want it to, I think it should really empower you. Because if you look back and you're like, where would I have chose differently? Where would I be if I had chosen differently? Now, you can't go back and change anything in the past, obviously. However, you can change everything moving forward. And that's the part where it's like, hang on a second, let's tune into manifesting a little bit. Let's pay attention as like this vision and as this guidepost for where you want to go. If you know where you want to be in 3 years, you're going to show up. You're going to pay attention to opportunities. You're going to be like, ooh, right now I can choose to grow or I can choose to stay where I am.
Yes.
And that's the part of manifesting that I absolutely love. And then if we think about our brains, like they literally can be programmed. And your thoughts today, it's something like our 80% of the thoughts that you had yesterday. And so if you don't like these thoughts, infiltrate something new.
Yeah.
And that's the part of manifesting that you can choose to believe it or not. But the people who do, they're going where they want to go. That's what I know.
Like, why not tap into that? Like, you have literally nothing to lose.
Yeah.
It seems like a no-brainer. I know we did that exercise too the other day of like, where do you want to be in 3 years? That was so powerful for me. And I like people listening too. And I don't know if you want to kind of key them in on that exercise, but would you want to talk about that?
I definitely can, because I think it's so powerful, and we can do visualizing in many different ways. But what I asked you was, if you look back on this call and you call me in 3 years and you say, Stacy, oh my gosh, this is what I'm doing, what would you say that you're doing? And what I had to stop you a few times, right?
Yeah.
Because your brain each time went to, okay, well, I guess I would be. I'm like, nope, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you. I really want, like, I'm asking this in a specific way because I want you to kind of like feel it. You're not going to feel it if you're saying, I guess maybe I would be like, oh, let's try again. And that's totally normal. And I know that a lot of coaches would not challenge that, because it's like, oh, just let it happen. It's uncomfortable, right? I don't want to like make her think she's wrong. Right. But if you do it politely and tactfully, it's always okay. Absolutely. And so then we kind of like, okay, reset again, get back into that mindset. And you did it maybe one more time. Like, well, I guess I would be. And I'm like, okay, one more,
Right.
And then you allowed yourself to go there. And I felt it for you. And it was like, okay, I'm sitting here. I'm doing this. This is what I'm looking at. This is where I'm living. This is what I'm doing. And then you said at the end of it, wow, I don't think I've ever said that before.
Yeah. I was shocked. Honestly, I couldn't believe the words that came out of my mouth. And maybe not so much as far as like there had been elements come in my brain of things that I had dreamed of, or maybe someday, and I think to just verbalize it and to be in the place of this is actually happening, to really like give into that and not just leave it. I think it's almost, for me, it's a comfort mechanism to leave it as a dream, because then if it doesn't happen, I don't feel like I failed.
Yeah.
Whereas if you own it and step into it can become your reality. And the doors actually open, versus it just being like peeking through the doors, seeing maybe, like, oh, that seems far off. That was a really powerful exercise for me.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that too, because it does kind of protect you. Sure. Like, okay, if I don't get there, if I don't make it, then I'm not a failure.
Right.
But also it allows you to really, again, if I use the word try it on, or the term.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You actually sat in that. And after that, you can't tell me that you don't show up differently.
I totally do.
Because now you see that as that's possible for me. And then if we kind of connect it to the manifesting work, guarantee if you record yourself saying that and you listen to it, all you have to do is listen to it. Maybe it's a 30-second audio. You record it, you feel it, and then you listen to it every day. You make different decisions. You get to say that,
just like you were saying.
Yeah.
Like,
and you get to say,
holds you.
Who am I needing to be today so that I can get to that point? Because it's already happened. It's already happening. I felt it.
Right.
And that is so much more powerful than just thinking like, okay, where would I be in 3 years?
Yeah.
It
just
really
a generic,
brings it to you.
It makes it so personal.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to journal about that.
Right.
On the line of journaling too, I know you are a big journaling proponent. You're, what's the word I'm looking for? A proponent.
Yeah,
You're a big proponent of journaling.
Yeah.
It was there. Yes. Fragments of the word were there. But can you share just maybe like one or two tips that you have for someone that's new to journaling?
Yes, for sure. So I will say I resisted journaling for a long time.
Okay.
I mean, up until probably, honestly, like last year. I was at a yoga retreat actually, And I tried it. I tried different forms of it. I was like, oh, okay, I'll do the start to day journal. I'll try this. I'll write these down. You know, I was like going through the steps and then wondering why it wasn't working for me, right? Like I wasn't connected to it, but I was like, okay, I'll see. And what I really realized about myself was like, I was so scattered all the time. I was such an overthinker. I was such a worrier. And I lived, even though I was really calm on the outside, I was like really in a high state of stress. And because I'm an overachiever and I want everything to be perfect and I want it yesterday and I want this like grand business that I'm comparing myself to. And that's something that a lot of people can relate to, I know. And I was at a yoga retreat. I was actually there as a photographer and there were some journaling exercises. And I always found myself, if there's a conversation happening, I want to be in it. I'm like, ooh, I want to know. I don't want to like break away. It was almost like, not that I didn't even feel like I needed alone time.
Okay.
And I just kind of felt like a frantic energy. And at this retreat in Arizona, I went outside and I was coaching photographers at the time. And I just kind of brain dumped all my thoughts on paper. And I was like sitting outside, I was in the sun, and I just let all these anxieties that were in my head out. And so that's the first part of journaling. If you are like spinning in your head, I would say get your thoughts out somewhere.
Okay.
Like don't put any parameters on it. I've had so many people say, well, I don't even know where to start. Like literally just start. Often I would start with, I'm feeling anxious today about, or so whatever you're feeling, just like
I'm feeling anxious about.
No judgment. I couldn't even read mine. It was like, once I started, my thoughts were like coming out so quickly. And I realized at the end of it, I was like, whew, okay, it felt like an actual release. And I did slow down. And I kind of let those thoughts, I was able to challenge them. So the way that you come to a coaching call and you have these thoughts pour out, I am there to challenge them, but you can also do that in your journaling. You kind of see, oh, wait a second, I've complained about that a lot. Like maybe I should tune into it. Is that something I really believe? Is it not? And then you have the ability to change it and literally pick a different thought. And
say, no, I don't want to believe that. That's not the truth. This is what I want to be the truth.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So now even like, and I won't say every day is perfect, but I honestly have calmed my anxiety completely.
Amazing.
And it feels so peaceful and it feels so grounding. And now I get to create happiness every day. And that's the part where if I like do have a little anxious moment, I'm like, oh, I can like metabolize it really quickly now because I see it come up and then instantly I'm like, hang on a second. Wait, no, I don't believe that actually. This kind of happened. I was at a retreat and I was going to do like, sort of like an exercise, I guess, you know, and I woke up that day and I have in my journal, okay, I'm waking up today feeling a little nervous. And then I stopped and I was like, actually, I'm not nervous. And that is so cool to be able to see the power of that. And that comes through practice and that comes through doing the reps, doing the work, you know, having the thoughts and challenging them. But that was another thing that I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is so powerful. And I don't often say that things changed my life, but journaling is something now I know if I don't do it, my mood is different.
Wow.
Yeah.
It helps you that much. I've heard that like with working out too, like that's a big thing for helping mental health and journaling. I see up there exactly with physical activity. Yeah. Like it's mental activity.
For sure.
Like it's you kind of focusing on taking care of the things you need to get your head right.
Yeah.
That's
really
so
from that holistic approach. Yeah. And also with my journaling. So I journaled more when I had like a lot going on, just like a lot of anxiety, a lot of insecurities. And it was like, oh, everything just needed to come out. Yep. And then as you kind of go along with that, it can get more intentional. So it can kind of be, okay, how do I want to show up today? Who am I? Identity work is a big thing I do in my journaling now. And like, what are my dreams? So if that dream is like, this is the vision that I have for my life, maybe I can write that down every day and describe it in such detail and like live it. Like there's such power in pen to paper, putting your thoughts down. And it's like this map for where you want your life to go. Otherwise, you live in the everyday chaos of life
Right.
And we're kind of like, whew, oh my gosh, we got to the end of the day. Thank goodness. You know?
You're almost just reacting. Like it's like you're in a pinball machine or something. Like, well, this happened, now this happened. I'm like, all right. And you're just reacting versus taking more of a proactive approach to it.
That's such a good analogy. Yeah.
That you get to
pinball.
I can picture myself. Some days I feel like I'm in a pinball machine, like between motherhood and...
Totally.
Sorry, I know we're getting long here on time. So I do, on that thread though, I have a question about like, how do you manage motherhood, running a business, showing up for your clients? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes.
Because you have two small children?
I have 3 kids.
Oh, you have 3. Okay.
They are now though 12, 8, and 10.
Okay.
So they're all in school full time.
Okay.
So summers are challenging for sure.
Absolutely.
But I think what it is, if we go back to like being proactive and reactive, I know that I could have done things differently this summer to set myself up better for success, right?
Okay. Yep.
And so I remember like when I was building my business and my kids were so small, I think that was the start of really creating a lot of that anxiety because I didn't give myself grace. I didn't. And there was no one there telling me to give myself grace. It was kind of like, I'm trying to be, and my kids are all 2 years apart. So they were like back to back, it felt,
Yeah, right.
And then trying to build a business, downloading every freebie, trying to do every course, trying to do everything that I could, never feeling like I was doing enough because of course I wasn't. You can't be a full-time mom and a full-time business owner and a full-time wife and a full-time human. Like you just can't.
Take care of yourself. Right.
And so
something will give.
Yeah, the biggest thing I wish I would have done for myself would have been scheduling more recurring time. If I needed to work, give myself the time to work. Don't try to fit it in between nap time and because it never happens the way that you want it to,
No.
And so I think like giving myself grace and giving myself time are 2 things that I really wish I would have done. And so now kids are in school. That's great. I can like work my schedule around them. But for next summer, I know that I will have to either have camps for them or activities, or maybe I bring someone in and my kids are old enough, they can stay on their own, but I don't want them to feel like, oh, mom's just working all the time. Right. So if I have days designated for work and then days designated for hanging out with them, I'm making sure that I'm balancing that as much as I can too.
Yeah. Protecting yourself too. And that's really good advice. Thank you for that. Thanks for letting me get off on that.
Yeah, for
just
sure.
a question. But yeah, so lastly, I ask everybody this. So I would like to ask you to, if you could pick one word for yourself, what would you like your audience to think of when they think of you? One word that represents you.
That represents
or your
me.
Business.
It's funny because I'm never one to just like, not even go with the first thing, but take the easy one, take the obvious, like quick answer. Yeah. I think authentic for sure is like what comes up immediately. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm not even going to quote it because I don't know, but it was like a political campaign somewhere. And this person had dinner with each of the people running. Okay. And she said, when I talked to this person, I felt like he was the most interesting person in the room. And then when I talked to this person, I felt like I was the most interesting person in the room. And that person won the election. And that's what I want to leave people with. That if someone thinks of me, they think about the best things in themselves.
You're this reflection of, oh, that is so good, Stacy. Thank you. Like the warm hug closing us out.
Yes. And it's funny when you say warm hug because I always saw it as like, oh gosh, don't tell people that. Like they're going to think I'm soft or they're going to think, and it's like, no, stop it. It's a strength. Again, got that out of my head. And then I really think, sometimes people really need that in moments of despair. Yes. But then also in moments of really big risk. Because like it's scary. Yeah. But if you have that comfort, you can like go so much further. That's what I think.
Definitely. And I say it in the best way possible because it's so comforting and reassuring. Yeah. So you are 100% authentic. I love that word. Great choice. Okay. Lastly, where can people find you? Where are you hanging out? Podcast, Instagram, all the things.
Yes, I have a podcast called Intentional. And I'm currently kind of turning it into a coaching podcast, which
Amazing.
I'm really, really excited about because it's just different. And I love the interview style also, but I want people to see what it's like to coach with me. Because it's a very elusive thing. It's kind of like, I don't know, do I need a coach? And no, I don't want you to look for mindset blocks if you don't have them. However, everyone kind of has something,
gonna be some
right?
There.
Unless you are living in like everything is in perfect harmony and I am absolutely loving every level, then like you've made it. Tell me your secrets, but we all have something if we're willing to kind of be open to it. So I want to show people that. And then I'm on Instagram a lot, Stacy Musgraves, and that's my website too. There's no E in my name and it's not Musgraves. No, Casey
You're not
Musgraves
Casey's
all the
cousin.
time. Yes. Yeah. And I have a journaling freebie available. I also have a mindset membership. It's closed right now, so you could get on the wait list for that. And then I do one-on-one coaching also.
Amazing. And if they're interested in that, they just contact you through Instagram or your website.
Yes, for sure. And I was going to say too, with this, if somebody hears this through this podcast, then you can send me the information. Let me know that you found it through Brooklyn, and I can offer you a free coaching session if you feel like that's something you would be interested in, because it's something that you just can't even explain sometimes. And if you're at all curious, if you're wondering, if you're open, then I know you're going to get something from it. You're going to grow in some way. So
what an amazing offer. Wow. Thank you so much for offering that. If you guys are listening and you are interested at all, seriously, check Stacy out. I am not just blowing smoke here. I love her to pieces. So thank you so much, Stacy. It was such a joy to have you on today.
This was so fun. Really, thank you for having me.